Hi, I'm glad you stopped by. I want to start by giving a big shout out to the International Day of Happiness. At the taping of this episode, it is March 20th, and that is, in fact, the International Day of Happiness, also known as World Happiness Day. Regardless of what you choose to call it, I happen to think it's pretty important and certainly worth our attention. In 2011, the United Nations General Assembly adopted a resolution which recognized happiness as a fundamental human goal and called for a more inclusive, equitable, and balanced approach to economic growth that promotes the happiness and well-being of all peoples. In 2012, the first ever UN Conference on Happiness took place, and the UN General Assembly adopted a resolution which decreed the International Day of Happiness would be observed every year on March 20th. It was celebrated for the first time in 2013 and then every year since. Given our current climate of uncertainty and conflict, this year's Happier Together theme reminds us that lasting happiness comes from feeling connected to others and being a part of something bigger. Empathy and compassion are a big part of what we're going to explore in this episode. My name is Kathleen, and this is the Mission Happy Lab. The learning series is called Choosing Happy. Let's get started. Although they are closely related and sometimes used interchangeably, empathy and compassion are not the same. While both involve responding to other people's emotions, they differ in focus. Empathy is characterized by an awareness of other people's emotional experiences and an attempt to feel those same emotions from their perspective. Compassion is characterized by the desire to take action to help the other person. The differences between compassion and empathy include what the terms mean, the feelings they evoke, and the behaviors they inspire. Empathy involves the ability to understand what another person feels. It can mean you can imagine yourself in another person's situation and feel what they must be feeling. Compassion evokes a sense of sympathy, concern, or pity for what other people are going through. Compassion and empathy also differ in the type of emotional response they evoke. Where empathy creates understanding, compassion is more likely to inspire feelings of concern, worry, or sympathy. You might care about someone's situation and feel moved to help them, but it doesn't necessarily mean you understand what they are going through. It is essential to note, however, that empathy and compassion often occur together. Empathy acts as fuel for compassion, and by empathizing with someone, you might experience feelings of compassion and a desire to help. Compassion tends to be based on taking action, whereas empathy is rooted in feeling. Because compassion is action-based, people are more likely to feel their efforts have been useful. Compassion and empathy can be thought of as existing on a spectrum along with sympathy. Sympathy focuses on thoughts, empathy adds feelings, and compassion encompasses thoughts, feelings, and actions. Research has also found that people are often more likely to empathize with people they relate to. This might include people they actually know or even those who are similar to them in some way. On the other hand, compassion is something that people can extend to others without necessarily needing to have a personal connection to the situation. Examples of compassion might include offering to help someone in need, volunteering for a cause, listening and being patient with others, and forgiveness. Whereas examples of empathy might include actively listening to others, being able to sense other people's emotions, and feeling what others are feeling. There's an old saying that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth so we can listen twice as much as we speak. People often overlook this recommendation when another person mentions their problems. Other people's problems make us uncomfortable, so we try to fix them and get rid of our discomfort instead of empathizing and listening. Not only do you leave yourself blamed if your unsolicited advice doesn't work, but you're also robbing the other person of control. Just sit with them and the discomfort and listen. Then, if they ask for advice, you can offer it. Although sympathy, empathy, and compassion are wonderful human attributes, prolonged exposure to other people's pain and suffering can also contribute to feelings of empathy burnout and compassion fatigue. Constantly feeling other people's emotions can be overwhelming at times, and because it may not be linked to efforts to help, people may feel helpless or hopeless. In addition to causing feelings of personal distress, empathy can sometimes cause people to feel guilty or engage in avoidance behaviors, including social withdrawal. This emotional and physical exhaustion leads to reduced feelings of empathy, increased cynicism, detachment, emotional numbness, and apathy. People who work in healthcare settings that involve prolonged exposure to other people's suffering, such as nurses, first responders, and therapists, are more prone to experiencing compassion fatigue. It's important to be aware that such situations can occur and to monitor your emotions from time to time. In such cases, taking a step back and caring for yourself is essential. This can be accommodated through practicing self-care, establishing emotional boundaries, and getting support from friends, family, or mental health professionals. So we've established that empathy and compassion are necessary components to healthy human connection, and we are seeing real-time results of the lack of it in our current global condition. History has taught us that if you remove empathy from the conversation and compassion from our actions, it is easier to dehumanize and foster hate toward others. Any of this sounding familiar? So, how do we learn, develop, and foster more of what mankind needs to turn this ship around? We are all empathetic to some degree. Humans evolved in social groups where empathy was an adaptive advantage. Some of us have deep wells of empathy, able to intuit the feelings of others, while others can become more empathic through mindfulness practice. Some psychologists believe that our natural reserves of empathy depend on the closeness of key relationships within the first few years of our lives. This is why empathy has been added to the curriculum of early grades and taught to young children in the form of an interactive experience with infants. Around age 3, the empathy that children are born with starts to become tainted by cultural and environmental factors. Toddlers become selective about whom to help, and they perceive those different from themselves as, well, different. This reinforces the argument that identifying with others and having compassion needs to be reinforced early on. In elementary school, children begin to learn the language of empathy, but they are not yet fluent. While they can recognize that two people can feel different in the same situation, they are more comfortable around those who are like them. That's one reason that bullying starts to pick up at this age. Peer pressure is largely the culprit for the empathy slump as kids enter middle school. Taking risk will often take precedence over doing the right thing, and fitting in with a group is paramount to most anything else. Bullying tends to become an even bigger problem at this stage. These can be really difficult times, but parents are best to remember that the empathy channel is most open when children feel okay with who they are. Solving, rescuing, and helicopter parenting tend to get in the way of raising self-sufficient, confident kids, but they're also crucial to avoid in raising empathetic ones. Also, if it's an option, try to negotiate limited social media as it fosters focus on superficial things, amplifies self-absorption, and draws attention to unreasonable comparisons. Definitely not empathy builders. This might also be good advice for us adults, and here are a few more ways to build empathy and perhaps compassion into your everyday life. Do something different. Try doing things that you've seen others doing but never tried. Put yourself in someone else's shoes for a while. Be open. Prejudice is a block to understanding. Examine your preconceptions about people and put them aside when you talk to them. Listen. Really listen to what others say and try to understand their emotional state and needs. Be curious. Talk to people when you don't have to. Fellow passengers on the bus, the barista, the store assistant. Inquire gently about their lives. Do something good. Make a commitment to help someone who needs help and make an effort to see this commitment through. Okay, so that was a lot. We learned that sympathy, empathy, and compassion are different from each other, but related and necessary for healthy and satisfying human connection and development. There was discussion about history and the role that empathy and compassion, or lack of it, has played. We explored how these emotions can be learned at any age, but are best started young. We recognized the pitfalls of empathy burnout and compassion fatigue, and we learned some strategies that we can try in an attempt to become more empathetic and compassionate humans. Thank you for taking the time to explore happiness with me at the Mission Happy Lab. Please like, share, and subscribe as it broadens our reach and makes this content available to others who might benefit from it. Feel free to drop a comment about today's discussion or suggest a topic for a further episode. Here's your homework. Get out there and perform some random acts of kindness in honor of International Day of Happiness, or just because it makes you smile. Bye for now, and I hope to see you in the next episode of Choosing Happy.